I'm going to paint this thing, and you're going to watch me do it. Dane D-Bags. It really sounds like a porno name, but it also works as a dwarf name. They packed him backwards. Well, at least sideways. There he is. Now we're mixing our same dirty brush into that dark flesh from Vallejo that I still say, really. I guess when you compare it to the light flesh, it is dark, but for real. I'm just dabbing that on a little bit. Very thin. Get most of it off of your brush. Just kind of absorb out of the eye sockets. I'm not big on painting eyes. If you like painting eyes and you like all the little details, good on you. I'll paint one solid color, but I find that I can't really make them look good. And a lot of people, when they paint, and if you like eyes, it's fine. I'm not here to discourage anyone. But a lot of people, when they paint eyes, they end up looking like robot chicken things. And my look that I like is more dark, a little more serious. So having just black eyes, kind of like a comic book character, is more appealing to me. Or like for my goblins, I'll do red eyes. Just a solid red, a little dot of, lighter red or black inside of it. But typically, if you're going to paint eyes, you would paint them first and paint around, so that you don't paint the whole model, taking your time on all this little edgy stuff just to ruin it by making two wonky eyes. So if you're going for the eyes, do it first. I'm not gonna. You go for it. Now we've overpainted a little bit here. I say we, it's your fault too. Overpainted a little bit here, but I'll go back in with the blue-gray and paint over that part of the beard. It'll be nice. That was a chair, by the way, not my ass. Alright, let's see. Is there any more skin? He just got his pack. Okie dokie. Here's what we're going to be using for this. We've got some flat black primer in a rattle can. We've got some white primer from Vallejo. You can approximate any of this. Obviously, it doesn't have to all be the same thing. Rhinox hide, dark brown. I feel like there's almost a little bit of purple in that color. I see that. If you don't see that, let me know in the comments, because I'd like to know. There's dark flesh from Vallejo, which I really I question that a lot. Vallejo, that, you know, it might not be the best name for this particular color, but it's a good color for what I'm wanting to do, so we're gonna go with it. We've got the Xerxes purple from Citadel, some magenta from Vallejo, and some blue gray. We've got lead belcher from Citadel, and Reikland flesh shade. I've only seen it written for a shade, and I am trying to keep this to a pretty small palette, considering you could do it with less. You know, I guess technically you could do it with, you know, just a few colors. This whole setup right here, you could probably get at a hobby store, including the wet palette, for probably around $50, I guess, if I would guess in today's ever-changing market of things. And that may sound like a lot to paint one mini, but if you got these colors, you could paint several, you know, different schemes out of that. And things like your primers are going to go a long way, you know, so you consider it in a price over time. And of course, one way that you could save money if you're getting started is to make your own homemade wet palette, which I have another video of. I'll put a link to. Take your painty stir stick, some of the blue tack, get real in there. Shake your rattle can. Little bursts, like that. Ready? Pass. 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 Hello, chickens. Hello. Hey everybody, it's hobby time. Now today we're going to show you a little trick where you can get your own, very own holder handle for painting miniatures. You probably already have it in your house if you're a hobby painter. So here, without further ado, is what you can use as a hobby handle that you probably already have. Take your miniature and some stick tack, like what my hair is made out of. Take your miniature and some stick tack and stick it on top of a paint bottle that you already have. Maybe you have a bottle of primer like this or some craft paint. And I know what you're saying right now, tacky friend. No, then if I dump my paint out, if I turn it, it's gonna be like, oh, I turn it and to dump it out, and you just try. You just try it, my friend. You can't do it. I'm squeezing so hard. Even this open one. Oh, oh, oh. No. There you go, hobby friends. Okay, so now we're going to try something. Since we've got it primed in black, we're going to try something you may have heard of called a zenithal highlight. And that is basically where you take a little bit of white, and typically you would like spray it down from above. And if I had a spray can of white, I would show you, but I'm trying to not use an airbrush, so I'm showing you a technique that you can use with an old paintbrush. It's all frayed on the edges. You just get it as dry as possible. It's called dry brushing. All right, we'll go over that again, but I don't know, I'm approaching this like it's a beginner video. I may not even be the person to teach you this, but I'm going to learn along the way too. So anyway, we're going to brush it from the top down because that's where light comes from, right? You know, we're going to have a light source. This is also going to help bring out features on our model while we paint it. I don't know if you can hear my dog dozing in the background. It's a favorite. Now we can see, and I'm just lightly going over this, just barely flick, 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 flick. But it's going to make any kind of translucent paint show the light through, and you'll still have the contrast of the darkness in those areas where we sprayed the black. Squishing down. It's too much. Get it really dry. You want it to just kind of not even come off on your skin. Just downward strokes, just down, 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 off, down and off. It's really easy to get good results. Too much. Good results with minimal tools, minimal investment. You can go all the way out. Just really wanted to kind of have this be kind of a beginner one, since this is my first full video painting one of these. So I didn't want to just jump in and be like, alright, this is a beginner video, so get out your airbrushes, kiddos. So I know what that's like, you know, just like, oh, I don't have that tool, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to watch this. You know, maybe you can get some cool pointers for what you can do with tools that you already have. This isn't any kind of special thing, it's just an old hobby brush. It's an old Citadel starter brush that's been beat all over the end, so it's good for little flicky stuff, but that's about it. Some big areas maybe. Top down, always top down. The tops of those horns, really good. I'm really just trying to use minimal amount of paint, or like amount as in like number of paints for this project, because I do want it to be something that encourages people who maybe you've thought about getting into this, but you're like, oh, it's expensive, it's time consuming. Yeah, I know, I'm going side to side. I said up, you know, down only, but I want to see. He's got so much gear. I love this model, but he's got so much gear. I need to highlight that to really see what's going on. And I want to see like his cloth here. Something that I really like about this model is that I don't have to assemble it. Something that I don't like about it is that there's parts touching, like this axe. I'm going to paint it with the metallic, and I'm going to try really hard not to get it in that little groove and touch the hammer, which I guess maybe I'll just use the same metal that way. Yes, we've already solved our problem, ladies and gentlemen. We'll just use the lead belcher for both. That's right. Well, I hope everyone out there is having a fun time watching this. Maybe you'll get your paints out and paint something small too. Maybe you'll paint something big. I hope if this inspires you, let me know down in the comments. I'm just doing this because I've been inspired to, you know. Just giving it a little bit of a heavier light on areas that I think is going to catch more light. I'm painting the pudding base. That's what this is called, a pudding base, which when I told my wife that, she asked me if that was because it was for putting the mini on the base, and it kind of broke my mind for a little bit, but I always assumed it was because it looked like a blob of pudding that was supposed to be rocks. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to paint this. It's fine just to use your pudding base or whatever on a board. Usually your miniature won't topple over most of the time with just that. But I'm going to be using this 1-inch poker chip as a base, and we'll put some fancies around it. A lot of times I'll just glue the pudding base to it. You know, that probably isn't the way a lot of people do it, but maybe we'll try something new this time. I don't know. There's still time. There we go. That's what I want. I want that bright and shiny. I want it popping out. Now, I'm going to use my wet palette that I made about a week ago. I have a professional one, but this one already has wet paint in it. So, why not? Just gonna take my brush that I was using for dry brushing. I haven't even cleaned it out. It still has some primer in it. I'm gonna mix up this blue-gray that we put in last week. Still wet, still very moist. I'm just using this brush because I'm going to brush it over a larger area. We're painting from the inside out, and that means we're going to start with what is on the inside, which is, you know, your skin and your hair and such. Getting this hair out of the way. I may have to go back over it. I think all we can see is the facial hair of the model. Going over it with that blue-gray. That's good. Now we're mixing our same dirty brush into that dark flesh from Vallejo that I still say, you know, really. I guess when you compare it to the light flesh, it is dark, but for real. I'm just dabbing that on a little bit. Very thin. Get most of it off of your brush. Just kind of absorb out of the eye sockets. I'm not big on painting eyes. If you like painting eyes and you like all the little details, good on you. I'll paint one solid color, but I find that I can't really make them look good. And a lot of people, when they paint, and if you like eyes, it's fine. I'm not here to discourage anyone. But a lot of people, when they paint eyes, they end up looking like robot chicken things. And my look that I like is more dark, a little more serious. Yeah, so having just black eyes, kind of like a comic book character, is more appealing to me. Or like for my goblins, I'll do red eyes. Just a solid red, little dot of, lighter red or black inside of it. But typically, if you're going to paint eyes, you would paint them first and paint around, so that you don't paint the whole model, taking your time on all this little edgy stuff just to ruin it by making two wonky eyes. So if you're going for the eyes, do it first. I'm not gonna. You go for it. Now we've overpainted a little bit here. I say we, it's your fault too. Overpainted a little bit here, but I'll go back in with the blue-gray and paint over that part of the beard. It'll be nice. That was a chair, by the way, not my ass. Alright, let's see, is there any more skin? This guy's packed. Okie dokie. Okay, now we're going back in, and we're going to not even clean our brush. Here's our frayed brush. I'm afraid this is what we're gonna use. We're gonna go in and we're going to get a little bit of this magenta, mix it in with our skin tone for this dwarvy boy. You always want to take your your dark paint to your light. That way you're using less of it to make your color. Unless you're wanting to lighten up a darker color, in which case I guess you could go the opposite way. This is making almost an orangey color. That's fine. I'm trying to break out of my dwarves are colorless, leather-wearing, worker fellows that never see the sunlight, so they never have any color in their cheeks or on their clothes. It's kind of flooded in there. You see right here, some of that paint came up from that original layer. It wasn't quite dry and I went in a little bit fast. Let my mistake be your lesson. Now we're cleaning our brush. Hi, everybody! None of these products I'm using paid for me to use them, by the way. So, if you buy them, it's on you. And I'm not necessarily endorsing them, but I'm just using what I use because it's what I like to use. So, I guess that's probably the best endorsement of all. Thanks a lot, The Masters Brush Cleaner and Preserver. Okay. What are we doing? Painting a mini. Okay. Get some of our purple. Oh, this is a new one. Yeah. Get a little dab. Put it on the wet palette near a like or complementary color. That way you can blend easier without having to travel. This would work here, here, here. Yeah. Close these real good. If you get this brand of paint, close it real good. Close all your paints real good, but for real. Okay. A little bit of purple and get the camera to focus in the underclothing here. Just in this cloak type thing that's under here that they're wearing, he's wearing. So again, I'm painting on surfaces where if I go over, I can paint over it. I haven't thinned this down other than there being water in the brush, just a little bit. Drifting. I'm left-handed, so I tend to drift to the left. A message. It's my mother. What awful thing have I done? No, I'm sure it's some wonderful thing that I've done. Certainly. Now, if we hadn't put on that highlight, I'm drifting again. If we hadn't put on that highlight, we wouldn't be able to see most of this detail here. So this is very handy to help paint. Let's say that's part of it. I've seen this mini painted by other people. This is the one it is, by the way. There it is. Now you can get your own. But I didn't want to just have a bunch of pictures open and paint it like someone else. I want to look at it and really kind of get the feel for what I want for this mini. I'm using so little paint. Like I got out a brush full of paint and that's all I'm using. It's covered good. Covered well. It is covered well. Let's see. I'm going to say these are shoulder plates. There I am drifting again. I'm just There we go. Now, if you want to put some highlights on, you can grab some of this magenta, pull it out with your already dirty brush. And it mixes it in the brush. You can kind of add those in along the edges of things. Again, we're using just a very frayed old brush, trying to get the big areas with it and get the most economy out of our hobby tools. I have a brand new one right here. I'm going to use it to finish it, but by using this old brush, I'm using up the blunt part of it and saving my sharp tip for the detail work once I get there. So soon the new brush will become a big blunt dry brushing brush. Use more of this color in here. Get it a little bit brighter. It's already going to be dark in the area under the shield. I'd like for this to stand out. We're using very thin paint, but we're not thinning it down much. Just whatever moisture was in my ferrule that just dripped out onto the bristles as I was mixing it. This is almost a glaze at this point, just kind of going over the already established purple, so that we're not just one static color. And notice that I keep pulling in more and more of the magenta. Am I drifting? Drifting. It's a drifter. Let's kill him. Okay, my battery's dying, so that's where we are for tonight, and I'll check back in through the miracle of editing you would have never known. But for the sake of things, I also want to encourage you that it's okay to set a project down and pick it back up again. So we're going to set that back down, and we'll pick it back up again. Hey everybody! Welcome back to Hobby Time! See? I told you that we would be back, and here we are, again, back at it. The model's in the same place, but it is 2 days later. You wouldn't have to know that because of the magic of video editing, but I wanted to tell you that because I wanted to let you know that I got back to making this video because I wanted to make it for you all to watch it. It inspired me to get back to working on something, which I know if you're watching this, you're a person who enjoys hobbying or something, you know, wants to get into something like this, and whatever's holding you back, I just want to encourage you to take hold of whatever kind of motivation you can find and carry forward with it, because it's all about that first step most of the time. It's all about actually making time to do it. And I know that's so difficult for so many, you know. It's really sometimes about finding the time that's already there that you're using for something else. And sometimes it may just be about communication, you know, whether it's with a spouse or a roommate, you know, if you need some quiet time to do your hobby, you know, just, you know, approach those things and take those steps, you know, make sure that you're taking the steps to do the things that you want rather than letting yourself get held back by excuses and, you know, just letting yourself keep yourself from doing it. So that's it. After looking at this, what I was reading more as a rough cloth, I believe, is more of intended to be like chainmail. And I'm going to paint over this rather than strip it or reprime it. I kind of like that there's going to be purple underneath. I'm going to kind of dry brush the chainmail on, and hopefully some of that purple will show underneath, because I still want the whole of the outfit to be purple, and, you know, maybe it'll actually translate on a small scale into having, you know, the purple underneath. So for metallic, we're using lead belcher. I'm not going to put that in the wet palette. They separate weird. In these pots, you can just kind of take it directly out of it, and I'm not going to thin it down, so try and get this to where you can see it. I've got a lot of paint on the end comparative to what I need. So what I'm going to do is wipe it off on the paper towel, just like we did with our dry brush priming earlier. We're just going to dry brush lightly over those chainmail areas. You may be able to grab a little bit more off of the towel. I'm not as worried about the axe touching this area now that I've recognized that it's chainmail. It's all just going to be a little metal junction because we're keeping it simple and using just the lead belcher instead of mixing a bunch of metallics. Just using some of that paint rather than wiping a lot of it off. I know that I'm going to use it on these parts, so I'll paint them from the inside out. You can probably see how frayed this brush is. I'm just using the edge of it. I'm just really doing this to kind of use the economics of using up all of my tools as much as possible, and also kind of prove a point to you that, you know, it doesn't have to be this perfect sharp end brush that you just dot paint on with. That's okay if that's how you approach it, but I want this to be accessible. Maybe later on, as we get on with the channel, we'll do some things that are a little bit more, you know, in depth, but I want this to be something that someone could easily see themselves doing. You don't have to do this just like me. You don't have to use the same colors. You don't have to use the same techniques, but maybe this will inspire something in you. Maybe you'll be inspired to think that, hey, my equipment isn't the greatest, but I could still make something out of it. I don't know. Maybe I'm dreaming. Maybe no one will be inspired by this. Maybe you'll look at this and you'll say, hey, I don't think this is for me. I had thought it was for me until I watched your video, sir. And now I know it's not for me. Thank you for saving me time and money. and I will have if that's your case, but I hope you do enjoy this. Maybe if you don't take up miniature painting as a hobby, you'll take up watching YouTube videos of miniature painters as a hobby. Wouldn't that be fun? Keep just kind of trailing off camera. And there you are, just being so good, watching my camera go in and out of focus. Not even saying anything about it in the comments, are you? Please leave a comment. I don't care if it's not a nice comment. I just like reading things. This can be a very relaxing hobby as well as a fulfilling one. For instance, I'm doing my hobby painting at night in my office, which is where my dogs are sleeping, keeping me company with their snores, listening to the frogs outside as the summer ends. Maybe your setting's not like that. Maybe you live in a more city setting. I'm not way out anywhere. Town is like right there. I don't mean to brag, but I could walk to the Dollar General store if I wanted to. Okay. But, it is a pretty rural setting out here. And I take that silence for granted a lot. But this is a great hobby. If you live in a city, you just put some headphones on and go away for a while, even if there is noise. I'll show you. Trying to get into this area back here, and this is actually where my brush, being not such a great brush, is coming in handy, because it's got that curved tip from where it's been sat down and curled. I can actually get a little bit of the paint on the underneath of the hook and go back in there and just kind of pull it forward. Notice I keep going around the same areas, just lightly putting a coat on over it. And it's such a small scale. It's really almost kind of a dusting. Don't worry about that. We'll put some purple over that. It won't be a problem. But honestly, that might not even read. We'll see. You know, when I had to stop the other day, it seemed like I had so much farther to go. Now that I look at this thing, we're really not that far away. You could detail just anything to death, but really we could have just done this in a quick color and a wash. Did some little highlights and been done. Maybe we'll do a video about that. But I wanted this one to be special. I'm going to try something before I get too invested in it. Getting some of this in a dry brush fashion, some of this lead belcher. It works okay like that. I was afraid I was going to have to line all of this, and we may have to come back and clean up little things, but I think I can get away with doing this in a quicker fashion. And that's okay. Don't beat yourself up about taking little shortcuts in your hobbies. People get very gatekeepy about hobbies. Hey, you like painting miniatures on the YouTube, but you can't keep them in focus. Oh, what? I'm just out of the club then? I guess. There it is. Okay. He needs a little bit more face on his face. I got a little bit rushed last time, got a little bit ahead of things, and painted on wet paint with wet paint, and it pulled off part of his face. So we're going to fix that. By the way, my nail is, that's my nail. It's lucky it's still there, I guess. I accidentally slammed it in a door, so it's all right. I don't recommend. Let that dry. I like to think that maybe some of you bought this and you're painting along with it like a Bob Ross, and we're just painting, happy little beard hairs. Okay. Let's fix his purple pants. This is where I want to be really gentle, because that comes right up against that axe. gap back here really isn't big enough to try and squeeze some purple in, so we're going to let that go. Really, if it's not something that you're going to turn it upside down, just pick it up off the board. Like, honestly, do you have people just coming over and picking up your miniatures off your board and just turning them over and looking at the underside, going, oh, well, look, you didn't continue his purple pants under his outfit. Look, it's black under there. It's fine. You can't see it, right? That's my advice to you. Don't paint it. Now this little part sticking out here, we can see. We'll paint it. Now, in that same vein, if purple gets under there, it's not going to hurt anything. Give him a little purple taint right there. There he is. You and I know it's there, but no one else does. You buddy. Just letting this dry out back here. That's how I roll, I guess. I got way too much ink or paint, whatever we're using here today. That whole line was out of focus, wasn't it? Y'all, I'm learning here, and I'm grateful that you're here with me while I'm doing it. This isn't something where I'm like, hey, I'm an expert at painting miniature things. You come to my channel and learn all of my expert techniques. No, I'm learning just like you are every day. Not some specialist at this. I'm not even very good at it. But I know enough that I can tell someone else who maybe isn't very good at it that they can do it. And I think that that's what I can do. Maybe that's my thing. Maybe I'm not the best. But maybe I can encourage you to pick up a brush and do it. You can do it. I mean, look at this. I'm doing it. Lots of other people do it. You can do it. What do you think? Should I try to get his little hat, helmet things with this? I need to paint the inside of it anyway. Yeah. this is a part of his like tunic type thing that he's got laying over him. So I'm going to go back in with the purple, hit that, get some of the other areas that are just kind of blotchy. I don't know what's going on up here with this shape. It definitely feels like this is part of his clothes. There we go. There, he's in focus now. Okay. Now for the shield, I want to use purple in that, and I want it to flow really well, so I have loaded my brush with water. You see how moist that is? It's lovely, isn't it? I'm going into my wet palette with my remaining purple, and I'm just going to drop it in there. It's very thin, almost like a glaze. I just want it to run everywhere in there. Hard to get gravity and autofocus at the same time to really work in there. Okay, we'll let that dry before we do anything else with it. It's all very wet in there. Okay. Where else can we go from the inside out? We're getting into some territories where I would like to have a sharper end on my brush, like right in here for the axe handle. Are we going to say he's having purple gloves? I think so. I think we're going to go with that. Maybe we'll bring in, I have a little bit of blue. If you don't mind me adding in something, I already had some blue in my palette here. So we're going to add a little bit of blue into that purple. Just a little satisfying mix right there. Here, let's do that. They're all going to run down, but it's fun to watch. You can watch that when I'm out of focus. I'm going to take that blue and I'm going to just use it as kind of a little undertone under this. Rinse, get a little bit of water. Just blend it. bit of my heavier purple. And again, no one's going to be looking underneath at his glove, but I know. I think I want that to be metal. I think that needs to be metal right there. It's important. That was the chair. That was the chair. Still the chair. It's important to remember that you're not going for one solid color over most of this. That's not how color works in most things in real life, at least not clothing. You know, it's going to have a little bit of a dynamic flow. So, I don't know, maybe you do want this. That's not what I want. That's not what I'm going for. I don't want it to just be purple, silver, gray, fleshy, purple, silver. I want it to be kind of a flow of natural colors. Hopefully that'll be what we accomplish here. Going in under his pants with a little bit of that blue. And back there where you can't see. Don't want too much of it on top. Got a little bit of water. You can see this. A little bit of water and just dab it. And let that absorb into it. So we're going to try not to disturb that little droplet. While we're doing that, we can take our brush and use our blue-gray on the pudding base. I haven't decided whether we're putting it on a base or whether we're cutting him free and making another base. I have a feeling that we'll be putting him on the base with the pudding. It's just a simpler technique, something that we can start with. And then maybe later on we'll get all knife crazy. People have a tendency with these kinds of models to paint a lot of gray for stones, and there are gray stones. This is gray, but it has blue in it. I don't know how much of that is being picked up on camera, but the blue that you pick up with your eye, rather you see it and go, that's blue. Well, it's going to register as a more natural color if you use a little bit of something more eye-grabbing, you know. Okay, pretty solid looking gray. I think we got his beard just fine on the first go around. There's a little bit of base right here on his beard. This might tickle a little bit. Don't sneeze, otherwise the paint will go everywhere. Thank you, Mr. Popretto. Oh, please, call me JD. Mr. Popretto is my father. Okay, now in my haste to give him a mustache over his face, I also painted his lip mustache colored. So we'll come back and we'll do that. Everything else is looking really nice though. Purple is settling into the shield very nicely. Chainmail looks really nice. I am going to just grab a little bit of this with my brush and take it down here onto my wet palette. Just get all the excess off of your brush. Then you have some that you can use on your brush. I'm going to paint in here on the back of the shield. Again, I'm not real worried about things that can't be seen, but if you try to get the things that might be seen, it'll look pretty good. So far we're doing pretty well with all of our tiny pieces, and we're still using our old frayed brush. Nothing looks way out of place. I'm just loading the tip. Hang on. Just the tip with a little bit of paint and just dabbing it on so that not too much goes in. We'll come back and we'll paint the areas where the metal meets it. Let's mix in a little bit of lighter color to this. Let's get a little bit of water to it too. There we go. That looks kind of cream colored. Let's get a little scale going here. That looks good. making his pouch that same color. I'm trying with this actively to steer away from the whole dwarves are clad in leather and gold and they work underground and they don't need anything special on them, and I want this guy to be like really different, really awesome. But a leather pouch is a leather pouch. I'm reading this as possibly, this as possibly a canteen or lantern. Might be wrong there, but I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to make of it yet. We'll see. It feels like a lantern. It feels like it would be fun to paint it like a lantern. Feels like that's what I'm already doing. Maybe I'm seeing things. But I think that's a lantern. Okay. I'm painting wet in wet areas again. Time to move on. Dabbing just a little bit of that lighter brown on the top of his helmet. May not even be able to see it when we're done here. But I'll know it's there, and you'll know it's there. This seems like a sword sheath. Oh, excuse me. This seems like a sword sheath. And I see a sword handle there. Let's go ahead and paint his boots. A nice leather boot, a nice dwarvy leather boot. This is where my instincts kick in and I give in. I realize now that I haven't taken the time to clean off any of the mold lines on this model, and I'm seeing the first one, really. That's this right here. And I'm fine with it where it is. Overall, I looked over this model and decided that there wasn't any cleanup to do. That's not going to be the case with most, and I mean most, miniatures. But here's a mold line. We could have cleaned it up, but really, you're never gonna know it's there. If you tell anyone that it's there, I'll know it was you. I feel bad for doing this because I showed you the colors before, and then we have the extra blue that was in here, but I'm going to use that extra blue, and I'm going to paint his bedroll blue because I have it and because I feel like that's what he would want. Something I'm doing as a little trick, I'm stabilizing one hand on the other, bracing it on the table for when I do little bitty dips like that. Little dip. That way your hand's not all like, coming in for a landing. Once again, not going anywhere. I'm just going to use a drop of my white primer just to lighten up some of this flesh color here. Use for the highlights on these horns. And bringing that color down into that darker color. And I'm going to give you a little spoiler here. We're going to bring that darker color back up over the lighter one. Just because we can. Okay, this lighter color I'm also going to use on these bones that are in here. Just going to kind of overbrush them. Going with that white. Just brighten it up as much as I can while still having it be creamy. I'm just going to paint the tips. In my imagination, that's a little flame inside of that lantern. I didn't want to use any extra color because I already broke what I said about what I was using when I brought in that blue. So I mixed the fleshy color with a little bit of that magenta to where I could almost see orange if I squinted. Maybe a little bit of that magenta in there, just to liven it up. It don't matter. We're going to wash it anyway. It don't matter. None of this matters. Whoa, I was way down there. Hi, everybody. Just say Smith or something. None of this matters. Okay, excellent. We've done a lot of it with just this old frayed brush. Frayed old brush? I believe that's the way that we would refer to it in the English language. It is a frayed old brush. So I'm going to carry on with it. Ain't like I got something to prove, but maybe you won't blame not having a great brush and you'll pick up the thing. I don't know. Maybe. I just got this hope that maybe one person, just one person, is going to be inspired by this. And if you were, please leave a note down in the comments. Just one note. Hallelujah. Boy, we're almost there without having to get out any detail brush. It's tempting to take this and cut the bristles so that I can have a sharper detail brush, but I also want to finish up using this as a dry brush. So many decisions. What do you think, Dane? Use the brush. Be the brush. Okay, man. But it's your likeness. Just like we did around the cloth. And we've got the little bit of blue. We've got the blue in here. We're going to go in with a loaded ferrule full of water. Load a brush full of water into the blue. And just drip it, drip it, drip it, drip it, drip it, drip it, drip it. I stopped talking for a second there. I was thinking too much. I mixed a little bit of white and blue just to make this lighter color, to make the ends stand out a little bit more. And they have that nice little bedroll texture. It's okay to make a mistake. Most of them are fixable. Most of them are unnoticeable. Go in with a little bit of white. That's our primer. Don't want it to be fully white. Drag a little bit of the blue and a little bit of the gray into this. We're just gonna flick his beard. Flick his beard with it. Maybe can't see as much from that one, but we'll do it again here in a minute. You'll see it then. Add a little bit more white over the top for shiny, shiny. Just think about where your light source would be coming from, top down, just like when we did that highlight. There's barely any white in this brush. Just a little bit of brown in there. Just a little bit of watery brown. Seep into those areas. That's what we'll be doing in a little bit with a wash anyway, but brown will fill the space a little bit easier. Just kind of feather these a little bit. A little glaze of the darker brown. Splash a little bit on the ground. Again, we'll use a shade, but to use up the pigments that we have. Layering these colors will make them look a lot more natural. Rocks are almost never clean. I mean, I guess they are in rivers and after a rainstorm and after a good tumble in a rock tumbler and all kinds of things. Well, rocks are pretty clean. You could probably eat rocks, probably eat off of rocks. You can kick rocks if you like. What are we doing now? Let's use a little bit of this blue gray. And this is where it gets a little tricky by my unwillingness to just use the new brush. I'm going to take the end of this and try and just give it a little swoop. Swoop right there. Swoop. Yeah. Now you got it done it. Now it's unfixable. Unfixable. Get a little bit of wet brush and just blend that out. It's like an eraser. My goodness, I'm not showing you anything. My brush is wet and I'm just blending it out. We're getting there, aren't we, Dane? Again, if you want to buy it for yourself, that's what it is. Reaper Bones. Nobody paid me to do this. Nobody paid for the mini. Nobody paid for the paint. So, this is all just how I feel about it. I think that this is a pretty good model. I think that this is pretty good paint that I'm using. And I think that I'm having a really great time. I think you will too. Let's go in now with our dirty brush. Grab a little white. Get it off on the paper towel. Flicky, flicky, flicky. And back in his beard. That's much better. Flicky, flicky, flicky in his beard. I like that better. done with this. Though I've gone kind of quiet, just kind of got into it for a minute there. Go back in with the white and little flicky flickies. There we go. That's what we want. We want someone with the air of a seasoned professional dwarf. I didn't dry off my brush that time. I'm going in with some very purposeful white strokes in the middle and on the ends of his beard, and throughout the end of the mustache. A little dot on top of each of the horns on his helmet, the end of the metal on his axe, and just a little bit, now that it's dry, down his arm and on the ends of the bedroll. the shield, the crest. It does take some of the shine off of the silver color, the lead color, but we're going to use probably a varnish over this anyway, and it's not going to shine very much. So at this point, I can't think of another thing to do to this paint-wise. So we are going to let it dry for a minute and sit it down, and we're going to think about it and look at it with fresh eyes here in just a few minutes. Okay, hobby friends, took some time to think about it, and I believe we are almost done, but not quite. When I look over this model, I see a few things, like I see some face. I see some face that has come off over here onto his beard. I want to fix that. Forgot about his lip. He's got blue lips like he's been frozen. We need to make him let that go. That's a dad joke. That's right there. That's for free. Yep. Looks like, other than that, I'm fairly overall happy. I may touch up a little bit right here. Hey, there's one of those mold lines. You'll find those often on the weapons and stuff. While we're here, why don't we just do it? Mold lines. Take something, anything. Scissors. Careful. X-Acto knife. This probably should have been like step one. I was in a hurry to prime it, and I didn't see any mold lines. I didn't look under here. Nobody else would notice it, but it's bothering me. Yeah, I'm scraping off my primer. I'm scraping off my paint. But I'm willing to make something better. These Reaper Bones minis, one of the really good things about them is the soft material that makes it all squidgy, that makes it easy to break your paint and such if you're not, careful. Also makes it very easy to make little changes if you need to. Looks better. And it'll cover just fine. My chair's all squeaky now. Had it all squeaked out, and now it came back and it's all squeaky again. So where we just fixed that, we're gonna go in. Just tap, tap, tap-a-roo. Still using my crummy brush. Feels pretty good. It actually does. It feels really good to just get through this with this crummy brush. I didn't really set out to prove a point. The original point was just that I was going to use this brand new, just Citadel brush that came with a hobby kit, and prove that you could do this with one of those. But I have this old one. If you're just now joining us, like YouTube works that way, that we've been using this whole time, and it's all frayed out. We've just been painting carefully, but really not all that much. We've mostly been painting out of focus, and that's helped. I find that this model shows its detail the best out of focus. Brightening it up, just a little flick down. I'm trying not to get it on the inside. I want it to show as being metal, but almost kind of like that rainbow metallic metal that, like, I don't know how else to describe it. Maybe it's because art-wise I go back to tattoos a lot, but I feel like it's flea market tattoo machine metal colored, if that makes any sense to you. By the way, don't do that. Don't buy tattoo machines at the flea market and just start tattooing each other. It's very gross. That's going to be my high horse for this thing. You got into this thinking you were going to be talking about the artistry of miniatures, and we're going to talk about tattoos. Don't tattoo yourself or your friends at home. It's a good way to get a disease, and we don't need any more disease right now. So just don't. I know you're bored at home and they've got rainbow colored tattoo machines at the flea market, but that doesn't mean that you can do that. So I don't know. I'm a snob because I was trained in a shop and worked in a shop, and I've never done it out of the home. So that's fine. You can hate on me in the comments below, because that's where it belongs. You just hate on it below. So again, if you have a problem with me having a problem with people tattooing at home, below me is where you're going to put those comments. Below me. There's like little buckles on these shoes. There we go. One cool thing about these larger features on the Reaper miniatures is that you have all these features. One other thing about it, though, is you feel like you need to paint every feature. It's neat. It's better than having less, I think. Because really, if you wanted to, you could just paint with less detail. You know. But it's there if you want it. There for the taking. Hey, buddy. fix his face. Try and get him in focus. You see his little bit of face that just crept out into the beard. Now, while we're waiting for things to dry, I'd like to address the lantern. There was some thought given to the lantern. And if you've forgotten, it's supposedly this thing right here. It could be that it's like a cask. It could be that it's like, I don't know, a little treasure chest that he's got slung with him. I don't have any clue. But I see a lantern. Now, I know that there's someone out there already thinking what I thought already. I know there's somebody who's got it in their mind already, and I've already thought of this. Okay? Right? Right? But what about dwarves are able to see radiation in the infrared spectrum, so they can see up to 60 feet in the dark, noting varying degrees of heat radiation. This ability is known as infravision. Okay, that's fine. I'd also like to point out that the illustration at the top of the page clearly shows a dwarf with a torch. Okay, so we've got a dwarf with a torch in the mine, helping his buddies out, helping them see. So it's not like they're just going to rely on dark vision all the time, right? They need light sometimes. And besides that, Dane Deepax clearly is a leader. And so I say he wears his lantern on him at all times while adventuring in the dark dungeons and caves that he and the rest of the adventuring party come across, because he knows that if he charges into the darkness, the others will fear for his safety and fear for their own safety. But if they see that light as it flickers in the distance, they will not give up hope that he is still okay. Just made that up out of my butt. That's Dungeons and Dragons, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls, and all of our non-binary friends. I just like to point out it's a game of imagination, and if you can be us, you can get through anything. You can even reason with a lantern on a dwarf. So I'm pretty happy about where everything is. Out the lip. The lip. You were going to let me get out of here without doing anything about the lip, weren't you? Just going to look like he's freaking freezing. Okay, let's see if we can get this. Ready? Watch me ruin this whole model. We want less paint than what we need. Did we do it? Did we do it? Oh my goodness. It's like a dot away. I can still ruin it, ladies and gentlemen, and all of our non-binary friends. Beautiful. I wouldn't dare do anything else at this point. There's probably a ton of things that a lot of other painters would do. And again, with the eyes, a lot of people at this point would just dot a couple of robot chicken eyes in there, and I'm not going to do that. A lot of people would just like dunk it and wash, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use a wash, but we're going to be targeted with it rather than use something dark like a black wash, like something like a Nuln oil or strong tone. Using this Flesh Shade from Citadel. Again, not paying me for this. It's just a really thin down paint with a type of flow aid in it. Nothing rattling around is either a shaker ball or a rock. So we're going to take our brush that we've been using this whole time, we're going to clean it up. Oh, good God, I didn't realize that my balls were in frame. Sometimes, whenever I'm waiting on something to dry or just killing time, I'll just sit here and play with my balls. Sometimes I'll just sit here and play with my balls while I'm waiting on something to dry. Just sit here and play with my balls. Okay. It's a little heavy on the brush, but I'm going to start with the base because it will be the most forgiving. Let a lot of that out on the base. You start to see it run into all those cracks. When that dries, it'll have even more contrast. Now we've got a little bit in the brush. I want to use it to go into one of the trouble areas with the eyes. That wasn't even in focus. There we go. Okay. again with my eyes. I just want them to kind of look like comic book eyes. Like how they're not super detailed. We're going to get that washed right into everything. Very light, very light. Get it really thick on the X handle. I'm going to do a whole lot to that. Washing it will look pretty natural. We'll do a little wash over the metal, the bone, and the lantern. Best for definition of shape of things. Got a little much in here. I'm going to pull it out. Put it over here where there's not as much. That's a bit much. I am going to go ahead and darken this a bit much. But I'm going to reduce it. I'm going to let it set for just a few seconds before starting to take some out. I'm just washing my brush, patting it out on the paper towel. Now it should absorb. Just kind of wick some of that away. That's right about what I want. Dab some in there. And in there. On the inside of this bedroll. And on the other side. Find my area of focus here. Okie dokie. Now it's dry. My dogs are snoozing. It's late, and I can't think of anything else to do as far as painting on this particular model tonight. So what we will do is hit it with the Mod Podge. Mate, mate, spray. Now, he looks all shiny and goobery, but it won't be like that. It'll dry clear, it'll be nice, and it'll be protected. And if we want to, we can go back in and we can add over that. There's no reason why we can't paint over a little bit of Mate Mod Podge. That'll seal it in. It's got varnish in it. Real nice. So yeah. That'll also make it so that all these different finishes of paint, you know, some of them are more of a satin finish, some of them are very flat, some of them are very glossy in their finishes. This is fairly glossy in its finish. That matte will kind of dull all of that down to one finish. So there we have it. We're finished painting. We're just waiting on that to dry. Well, what do you think, tacky friend?
I think he's all right.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for painting him. I really enjoyed this today. I really enjoyed being a part of this. Part of my tacky is down there underneath him, stuck on that bottle. And don't forget to watch the video where I show you how to use tacky on a bottle. I'll give you a spoiler alert. You just put tacky on top of the lid of a bottle, and then you can use it to help hold your model. It's your model holder thing. So, that's great. Good job, everybody. Have a good hobby time.
Alright, now on to basing. Take your little 1-inch round base, put some super glue on it like so. Take your miniature off, put your miniature on about the middle. This one's bent up a little bit, and I'm going to leave it like that. We'll fill it in here in a little bit, but just leave it someplace where it's going to dry flat. All right, so that is tabletop ready. You could just do that and go with it, and it'd be great. It'd be fine. It'd look fantastic. I've seen before where people will use a clear little base so that whatever is on the battle mat or your map or whatever shows through. that's cool. Then you don't have to think about anything. I like making terrain and stuff like that, and I caught the basing bug, and I'm going to pass it on to you, because that's what you get for coming to this channel. You get ideas in your head. Hopefully this will inspire you to do something. If it's not miniature painting, then maybe something. I don't know. Maybe it is making videos. You're like, hey, that guy made videos and it's all out of focus and terrible, but he made one and I can too. So hopefully I've helped in some way. So anyway, we could base this just really basically. Did you like that joke?
I like that joke. I thought it was okay.
Yeah. Oh, he's not going anywhere. He's going to be around for a while.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, tacky friend. So anyway, we could just leave it like this, but we're not. We're going to pop it off. We'll talk about the different types of things that you can base with. Just a little rundown of some things that I know how to use. Like, I'm not approaching this in any way as being like, I'm your expert to guide you through this, but this is what I know, so I'm going to tell you. So right off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to base it with sand. This is just sand like you would use to level up stuff around the home. It's just patio sand. We can get then you hold your mini by its little head and dunk it in, swirl it around, take it out, tap it off, give it a little tap tap taparoo, clean off the edge. Get a little bit stuck there, that's okay. Okay, we can let that dry, and while that's drying we can talk about basing materials. I like this for a base because, one, it's varied. It has little stuff, it has big stuff. Two, it holds onto the glue very well. It just makes a big solid mass, and it looks nice when it's painted. Now, other than that, if you don't have that available, there's play sand. You can get this in small amounts online. Just buy a small bag of it, for just like kids' toys and stuff. You can get big bags of it for sand boxes. That's what I stole this largely out of. I don't like that as much because it is a more uniform size. It's almost like every one of them is just about the same. So it just kind of is like, I don't know, it's a little bit fake looking to me. And, I say all the time that it's supposed to be about having an imagination, but it just doesn't do it for me. It needs to do it for you. And if it does it for you, great, that's an option. Sawdust is a popular type of flocking to use. People say that this comes off really easily. The few times that I've used it, it seems like it adheres really well, and really under varnish or Mod Podge, it really just seems like it's sealed in plastic, so tea is something that I've seen a lot of people use. I've used it a little bit and I didn't really care for it. Some tea is obviously good as leaves. I think that, green tea, it looks like a condensing leaf. for the scale. So I like that. And again, you know, you're sealing it in glue and Mod Podge, so it really seems like that's going to be fine. Everything degrades, you know. We're all going to degrade one day. So I wouldn't get too worked up about it. You know, your pieces may have paint come off of them, and you can touch them up or not. You know, it may just show the years of play, and you might like that. But it's your call. This is just some ideas. More tea. I need to probably get rid of a lot of this. This is what this hobby turns you into. You start looking at stuff and you're like, that looks like a tiny rock. Like, that looks like a tiny rock. This is sold in containers in a lot of hobby stores. It's just cork. And all that is just little pieces of bigger pieces that are coasters that my kids broke, you know. So you can find hobby stuff all around, or it just finds you. In general, it seems like if you have an interest in some type of hobby, then if you let that be known, most people are really going to be supportive of that, unless they're dicks, in which case, well, fine. Then you're sharing your hobby time with someone who's a dick, you know, so don't waste your time. That's a lesson you can learn. But I've lost my place. I've lost my place in the great philosophy of what I was pondering. Oh, basically everyone is going to be really supportive of you if they're a real person. That's basil, and that looks like leaves, so I saved it. So it's what it turns you into. These are some flocks that I made from tea, pretty convincing, under a layer of Mod Podge. Little bushy bits from that came out. I probably should just kind of cull a lot of this, but you end up saving just whatever. Just, you know, this is a mix of rocks. If I need a tiny rock that looks like a boulder, about Baldur's Gate presents, I have it, you know, so there it is. You end up saving containers. I've thrown out a lot of stuff already. I've learned well as I've gone on, and I'll lose some from tonight. You know, just looking at all of this out here, I see things. This is just a mix. It looks like tea. It looks like rocks. It looks like, you know, I had the idea that that was going to be worthwhile. And it might be, you know, and if you're starting out, these are just ideas. This EPS styrofoam, it is good for looking like rocks at this scale. You could break off some of that and paint it, and it looks like rocks. You don't have the weight of the actual stones, but it's an option. You know, maybe you live in an apartment and you've had a blender delivered to you and you have this packing around the blender, but they didn't pack it with rocks, so this is what you have to use. Again, that was my chair, not my ass. You'll end up with things like this if you go farther in this hobby, I guarantee it. A little just package of things that seem like they could be hobbyfied. I have some painted pieces of bark that are good for using for rocks, some more cork, these seeds that can be glued down. These look nice. I might. And this is exactly why you save it, because, oh, it's going to fit it just perfectly, I know. Let's get a closer look, hobby friends. Maybe not that one that fell off. Maybe not this one curling out to the side. Oh, yes. We'll just put that off to the side. So yeah, you'll end up with a lot of things, twigs and things, bristles for grass and reeds. There are products. This is just going to be the introductory thing. This is the go. While my super glue is drying on my sand, we'll just give it a whole go, and reminding you, no one's paid for any of this. I haven't been paid by Big Sawdust. I have not been paid by Big Tea Leaf or Big Coffee Ground or even Big Aggregate Sand. Aggregate Sand. I don't care how aggregate they get. I'm not taking their big sand money. But if Gale Force 9 or any of those companies wanted to give me some aggregate cash, that would be fine. These are from them. They're static grass. When you get this, I just want to prepare you for something. It's going to be all over everything forever. So just be cautious with it, and a little bit goes a long way. There are applicators that look kind of like cheese graters that are for dumping over, making large terrain, fields and stuff. I don't have one of those, so we're not going to demonstrate that. We'll be using good old-fashioned gravity if we use any of this. And most of the time the blades end up upright, but I mean, go out and look at a field. Your grass isn't all just 100% just perfect blades of grass. You get different colors because it's not all, not all one color, but that does add a nice touch to the pieces. You get little tufts of grass. It seems silly, but when you add them to the pieces, they put them in kind of a different scope of realism. Just kind of, I don't know, to me, these things are very unnecessary for a game like Dungeons and Dragons. I see with a game like Warhammer, where it's, it's driven by the figures, it's driven by the miniatures. They're obviously necessary, but with something like D&D that can be played without them, it almost seems like a extravagance. But I don't really have a lot of opportunities to get people together to play. Just kind of reinvigorated into this during the pandemic, and so in not getting to play, this has been very therapeutic for me to just focus on painting these tiny little elven creatures or dwarven creatures that just needed to be brought to life. I liked miniatures. Whenever I got a set that came with a few, I played with them, but I didn't paint them. And I said that I liked that they were unpainted because then it allowed you to imagine whatever you wanted. You imagine whatever they were wearing, whatever they were looking like, whatever. It was probably mostly BS because I didn't want one more thing to do, to have to, prepare to play a game with the one friend that I convinced to play, modified, it'll be less than 2 hours game of D&D. But anyway, I digress. You can make your own static grass by dyeing fibers. from twine. This is what this is. This is something that I learned from Bard's Craft channel. It's a really great channel. You should check it out. If I can think of it whenever I am doing something like this, if I've got that tip from someplace else, I'll try and give credit where credit's due, because these are some great contributors to this community and the type of people who enjoy this sort of thing. So I may only have a few people following me that are interested in this, but it's worthwhile to check those people out. And if I can remember, I'll leave a link below. So you can also get all kinds of little custom bits. I did a whole video on citadels, skulls. It's just a bit kit that has 340 skulls in it. It shows you what you get with it, so that you can add to your basing and your dioramas and things like that. And this is really great for kit bashing or just coming up with your own kind of thing. They have these, and they have some vines and leaves and things like that. But just going to a hobby store or a craft store, or even a Goodwill or flea market, and looking at the little rubber plants and things that they have, you might be able to cut up something like that that'll fit on your miniature and make it look real nice. Let's see if we're dry enough here. It's pretty good. We've got a little place here where it didn't take any, and I'm not happy with that. So "3 hours later." No, I'm just kidding. I'm just gonna fix this real quick. I mean, anything worth doing is worth doing right. Hit it with your primer. And take one of these, and they're sticky on the back. You can just stick them there, but they're not gonna stay that way. I mean, they're just not. Okay, so simplest application is a little super glue. I gotta do this off camera. You imagine it. I'm holding it by the grass, dipping it into the super glue. Put this one around the back. Some of the fibers don't make it sometimes. Make a wish. A helpful tool are a pair of tweezers. These are super sharp. They're for a vinyl kit, like for cut vinyl. Yeah, very handy tool. You can pick it up. And just knock it out. Like that. Huh? Yeah. I don't know. It's for me. I like the look. Some people don't. I do. They say once you're on the grass, there's no going back. It's just a gateway to stuff like skulls and freaking, it'll be putting like goblin heads on stakes and all kinds of weird stuff before too long if you get into this hobby. So, yeah. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed it. And just remember, whatever it is that you want to do, just you figure out what you want to do and do it. Okay, hobby friend?